This video contains the stories of people who have been affected by the Conservative Party's stance on welfare payments. Some of the stories may be upsetting, and viewer discretion is advised. If you are affected by the topics discussed in this video, there are resources linked in the description where you can access help. While some of the clips used in this video are from several years ago, the stories told are still relevant today, given they all took place under a Conservative government or involved Tory MPs. On Friday the 19th of April 2024, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak made a speech in which he outlined his plans to tackle sicknote culture in Britain.
Well, thank you and good morning, everyone. Today I'd like to talk about the growing number of people who've become economically inactive since the pandemic and the moral mission of reforming welfare to give everyone who can the best possible chance of returning to work. Now, the values of our welfare state are timeless. They're part of our national character of who we are as a country. We're proud to ensure a safety net that is generous for those who genuinely need it and fair to the taxpayers who fund it. We know that there are some with the most severe conditions who will never be able to work, and some who can no longer work because of injury or illness.
I've got a connective tissue disorder called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. You get regular dislocations in basically all your joints. Originally I worked very hard. I was doing 60-hour weeks at one point. My driving licence made me cry. I howled because I just had my third child, and then I had to hand my driving licence back. Each thump and jolt goes all the way through me, right up my spine.
And they and their loved ones must always have the peace of mind that comes from knowing they will always be supported.
After her son was born, just due to the severity of mental health, and then she developed agoraphobia as well, and so she really struggled to leave the house unattended and unassisted.
Philippa applied for personal independence payment.
PIP is paid on a 4-weekly basis, and in 2024 the allowance is now in the range of £72 to £108 per week, with an additional £28 to £75 available under the mobility allowance.
She completed the first application, which she found very, very stressful and was unable to do without intense assistance from a community psychiatric nurse, and then was sent to give evidence, which was provided by her diabetes nurse and by her community psychiatric nurse, and that was lost and her benefits were stopped.
But we also have a long-standing and proudly British view that work is a source of dignity, purpose, of hope. The role of the welfare state should never be merely to provide financial support, as important as that will always be, but to help people overcome whatever barriers they might face to living an independent, fulfilling life.
Roy was getting employment and support allowance. He'd been asked to attend an assessment but didn't go, so his benefits were stopped, which triggered a suicidal episode.
At the Campbell Centre, they helped him to reinstate his benefit. But then when he returned home, he kept receiving the letters. I believe that what triggered my son to carry on was the letters they kept receiving from DWP.
Everyone with the potential should be supported, and not just to earn, but to contribute and belong. And we must never tolerate barriers that hold people back from making their contribution and from sharing in that sense of self-worth that comes from feeling part of being something bigger than ourselves. And that is why this is a moral mission, and why the value of work is so central to my vision for welfare reform. Now, of course, those with serious, debilitating conditions should never be expected to work. But if you have a low-level mobility issue, your employer could make reasonable adjustments, perhaps including adaptations to enable you to work from home. And if you're feeling anxious or depressed, then of course you should get the support and treatment you need to manage your condition. But that doesn't mean we should assume you can't engage in work. That's not going to help you, and it's not fair on everyone else either. So we're going to tighten up the work capability assessment such that hundreds of thousands of benefit recipients with less severe conditions will now be expected to engage in the world of work and be supported to do so. We don't just need to change the sick note, we need to change the sick note culture so that the default becomes what work you can do, not what you can't. Building on the pilots that we've already started, we're going to design a new system where people have easy and rapid access to specialised work and health support to help them back to work from the very first fit note conversation.
You can tell it's bins day. I didn't expect to have such an issue getting into my work capability assessment. See, now she can get up the curb there. I have to go all the way up here and round. This is my issue. It will not get up there. I rung for assistance when I realised I couldn't get up the step. Two ladies came down, took one look and said, well, we can't lift that. They told me to go home. And I said, but will that class as a failure to attend? And they're like, I'm not sure. They couldn't give me any answers. All they told me to do was go home and phone up DWP. They said, well, we'll give you an appointment in Chelmsford. And I said, but I can't get to Chelmsford. And then a month later, my money stopped.
And part of the problem is that it may not be reasonable to ask GPs, who are perfectly very busy at the moment, assess whether their own patients are fit for work. It too often puts them in an impossible situation where they know that refusal to sign somebody off will harm that precious relationship with their patient. So we're also going to test shifting the responsibility for assessment from GPs and giving it to specialist work and health professionals who have the dedicated time to provide an objective assessment of someone's ability to work and the tailored support that they need to do so.
Thank you. What was the result of the P4?
First one, it was 250, and so the first one 250, second one 200, and the last one 150.
Is that bad? Good.
Not for your height and age.
But in the final report, that last reading, 150, appears to have doubled to 300 litres per minute, twice the capacity never registered on the tape.
Having a bath.
He says it was just one of a number of mistakes made in his assessment that day.
Very poorly assessed from first moment on arrival. She also asked me to do a physical test that it suggested in the assessment guide that I shouldn't have been asked to do. And she also said that she'd done a physical examination of me, and it's very evident on the audio recording that she never did that at all.
For those who could work with the right support, we should have higher expectations of them in return for receiving benefits. Because when the taxpayer is supporting you to get back on your feet, you have an obligation to put in the hours.
It's now been a whole year since Nadine Dorries last spoke in the House of Commons. Since then, we've paid her £113,000 for her work. She earned £85,000 from her MP salary, £11,000 for her 61 days as a minister in the interim Boris Johnson government, and nearly 17 grand from her ministerial severance package. On top of that, she received £30,000 in book advances and royalties. She has so far not declared her earnings from presenting a show on Talk TV or for writing a column in the Daily Mail. Ms Dorries pledged to stand down as an MP with immediate effect on the 9th of June, but so far hasn't triggered the formal mechanism to do so.
And if you do not make that effort, you can't expect the same level of benefits.
Did you know Boris Johnson is going to get nearly 20 grand for resigning? That's because government ministers are entitled to a one-off payment worth a quarter of their salary when they quit. Boris Johnson will get £18,860, and he's not the only one that will get a payout. More than 50 government ministers who resigned in the last few days because they'd had enough of Boris Johnson will also get some cash. It all adds up to about £420,000 worth of payouts, and that's all funded by taxpayers. Some have said these MPs shouldn't be taking the money, especially when so many are struggling with bills going up. This MP has said she'll be handing back her payout of nearly 17k. Will Boris Johnson do the same?
We're changing the rules. Anyone working less than half a full-time week will now have to try and find extra work in return for claiming benefits.
Let's talk about another group of publicly paid individuals apparently being lazy as well. Oh, it's me and my colleagues in Parliament. Apparently, Parliament is doing no work. It's not a case of opinion, it's a case of fact. This is a zombie parliament. So apparently Parliament is only working 7 hours, 58 minutes a day when Parliament sits, 49 minutes longer. So that's how long it used to work. So it's only working 7 hours now. It used to work 7 hours, 58 minutes. But if you go back to the happy, halcyon days of Tony Blair's first term, Parliament was working 9 hours, 15 minutes.
Exactly. One of my other big concerns about the system is that the longer you stay on welfare, the harder it can be to go back to work. Around 500,000 people have been unemployed for 6 months, and well over 250,000 have been unemployed for 12 months.
Unemployment in the UK has risen to 3.8% of the labour market, a sign perhaps, as unemployment nudges higher, that the economy is being affected by high inflation and that the economic growth is slowing down. However, unemployment remains low. It's still 0.2 percentage points below pre-pandemic levels. Now here's the chart showing the number of unemployed as a percentage of the labour force, 3.8%, well down on levels seen at the end of the last recession. There are still over 1 million vacancies in the UK as companies struggle to recruit staff. The rise in unemployment is largely driven by an increase in short-term unemployment, people out of work for up to 6 months. The other two rates of unemployment, between 6 and 12 months, and people out of work for at least a year, well, they remain fairly flat, having fallen in recent times.
These are people with no medical conditions that prevent them from working and who will have benefited from intensive employment support and training programs. There is no reason these people should not be in work, especially when we have almost 1 million job vacancies. So we will now look at options to strengthen our regime. Anyone who doesn't comply with the conditions set by their work coach, such as accepting an available job, will, after 12 months, have their claim closed and their benefits removed entirely. We need to match the support people need to the actual conditions they have and help people live independently and remove the barriers they face.
In this County Durham semi are some very personal unemployment figures. 12 months out of work, 4 to 5 job applications a day, and Stephen Stubbs reckons that amounts to more than 1,500.
I'm applying for all types of accountancy roles. I'm even applying for non-accountancy roles because I'm so desperate. Well, desperate's the right word, to find work and get myself back into a 9 to 5 routine.
Stephen is visually impaired after a massive hemorrhage behind the eyes. His lack of peripheral vision means, among other things, he can't drive. He uses special computer equipment to file his job applications that hadn't resulted in a single interview. That was until today. After 1,500 forms filled in, it's time for the suit.
I'm not given the opportunity at all to show what I can capable of.
What about government initiatives, incentives? Have they helped you in any way?
They're very few and far between. The incentives that the government brought out recently are targeting young people, first time getting into the workplace, or young families with children.
He revealed this is about so much more than money.
I've got pride in myself. I've always worked, and I just want to be able to look at my pay packet and see that I've paid national insurance and paid tax, and I've actually contributed to society. That would mean so much to me.
But we need to look again at how we do this through personal independence payments. I worry about it being misused. Now, its purpose is to contribute to the extra costs people face as they go about their daily lives. Take, for example, those who need money for aids or assistance with things like handrails or stair lifts. Often they're already available at low cost or free from the NHS or local authorities.
Page applied for a benefit for people with long-term disabilities called Personal Independence Payment, or PIP. But like many others, her claim was rejected.
Well, PIP is basically just support. It's not a lot of money. People think it's a lot of money. It isn't.
PIP ranges from £22 to £141 per week.
I need maybe a banister up my stairs, or some cutting tools, or a different perching chair so I can sit a bit higher so I can cut my stuff. I can't make a bowl of pasta on my own, no.
And they're one-off costs. So it probably isn't right that we're paying an ongoing amount every year.
Hello, I'm David. I'm 56. I've been registered blind for quite a long time now, and also have hearing aid because I'm deaf. One of the things I use my DLA for is to help me with my computer. I use the computer for shopping, to do all my banking. I have to buy software, a screen reader. It's very expensive, it costs £1,300. But to keep it updated is £160 a year. In order to read books, I use a portable Daisy player. I use it day in, day out, both for studying and leisure and virtually everything really. But they cost £250. So I work out that just in terms of replacement costs for a little device like this, which is so important to my life, I'm spending over £10 a month effectively just in the replacement costs.
I want to be completely clear about what I'm saying here. This is not about making the welfare system less generous to people who face very real extra costs from mental health conditions. For those with the greatest needs, we actually want to make it easier to access with fewer requirements.
Hi, I'm Shannon. I live in London. I receive PIP Daily Living Award, but I don't get the mobility component. I have quite complex mental health problems. I had been on disability living allowance. I had been for a number of years. I then got reassessed last autumn. It was quite a full-on assessment. I had to go back through everything again, explaining how my condition affected my ability to eat, wash, dress, walk, talk, communicate. When I got assessed, they said that I had high needs for my daily living, but they said that I didn't have any needs for my mobility. It really concerns me that policy is being made saying that mental health isn't as severe as physical disabilities.
Struggling to travel kind of affects me every day. Sometimes that's as much as just missing my bus stop, phasing out, forgetting where I am, forgetting what I'm doing. I went to a hospital appointment on the wrong day, I got confused and it took me 5 hours to get home on what should have been a half an hour journey. And all I know in that time is that I bought one chocolate bar and 2 people left a note to say we put you back on the right train, and then a police officer put me in a taxi home.
And beyond the welfare system, we're delivering the largest expansion in mental health services in a generation, with almost £5 billion of extra funding over the past 5 years and a near doubling of mental health training places.
Mental health is a subject that has received a lot of attention in the UK in recent years. Charities like Mind and Movember have elevated the issue to the fore of the public's attention. However, it seems like despite these efforts, the problem is still getting worse, especially for younger people. The British Medical Association, or BMA, pointed out that from 2016 to the end of 2022, the number of children and young people in contact with mental health services grew at almost 4 times the pace of the NHS's psychiatry workforce. This means that without intervention, the NHS could be 15,800 mental health workers short in just over a decade.
But our overall approach is about saying that people with less severe mental health conditions should be expected to engage in the world of work.
So this study was conducted in the Dutch social security system, and it is different from other jurisdictions. What we found is that the factors that are important for successful return to work doesn't really relate to the system, to the social security system the workers are in, but it has more to do with the role the line managers have in the return to work process. So we believe that these findings are relevant for other jurisdictions than only in the Netherlands.
In a lot of previous studies, there's a lot of focus on the mental health problem as the cause for sick leave, and our study shows that, in fact, what happens at the workplace is very important, and our study results also underline the importance of the role of the supervisor or the manager.
We can't allow fraudsters to exploit the natural compassion and generosity of the British people.
And over to the UK, where fraud and error from a loan scheme to help businesses cope with the COVID-19 pandemic launched during COVID-19 pandemic, it could cost British taxpayers up to $37 billion.
We've already cracked down on thousands of people wrongly claiming universal credit, including those not self-reporting earnings or hiding capital.
Duck houses and moats. You couldn't make it up, but there have also been very serious abuses, flipping homes to avoid tax, claiming second home allowances twice over. Epping Forest MP Eleanor Lang is repaying the most, £25,000 in capital gains tax. Arch Eurosceptic Bill Cash is repaying £15,000 worth of mortgage claims. John Butterfill is returning almost as much, mortgage payments and council tax for a staff annex, not, he insisted, servants' quarters. Former Minister John Gummer is repaying £11,500 in gardening bills, those molehills on his estate, and in second home allowance. And Peter Viggers, he of Duck House fame, is handing back £10,000.
We are preparing a new fraud bill for the next Parliament, which will align DWP with HMRC, so that we treat benefit fraud like tax fraud, with new powers to make seizures and arrests, and will also enable penalties to be applied to a wider set of fraudsters through a new civil penalty. If we can deliver the vision for welfare that I've set out today, then we can finally fulfill our moral mission to restore hope and give back to everyone who can the dignity, purpose and meaning that comes from work. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all of the brave people who shared their heartbreaking stories of how the UK benefit system has treated them. Without you, this video would not be possible. I'd also like to thank the various media outlets I used as sources for this video for sharing these important stories. If you have been affected by the contents of this video, please check out the video description and pinned comment for resources you can access for assistance. Please remember this video at the next general election. Vote accordingly.
We can't allow fraudsters to exploit the natural compassion and generosity of the British people.